6 months after her rescue, Zara stood on the bridge of the human assault ship Retribution, her crystal formations glowing softly in the dim lighting as she maintained her connection to the ship's systems. Around her, a mixed crew of humans and liberated beings from dozens of species worked with practiced efficiency, preparing for what Command had designated Operation Shattered Chains. "Status report," Marcus called from the captain's chair. The human had been promoted after his success in recruiting alien specialists like Zara, and now commanded one of the Liberation Fleet's most effective strike teams. "All systems green," reported Jackson, who had proven to have an exceptional talent for tactical analysis after his rescue. His Andraxian ability to process multiple data streams simultaneously had made him invaluable to the fleet. "Target facility is holding steady in orbit around Grimash Prime." Zara interfaced deeper with the ship's sensors, her consciousness flowing through crystal pathways to enhance their scanning capabilities. "I'm detecting massive crystal matrix networks throughout the facility," she reported. "The Brutarians are using enslaved crystalline engineers to design their security systems." Marcus's jaw tightened. This was personal for all of them, but especially for Zara. The facility they were about to assault was Vorthak's fortress, the same place. She would have been taken if Marcus hadn't intervened at the slave market. "Can you bypass their security?" asked Sarah, who now served as the operations intelligence coordinator. Zara nodded confidently. "My people built those systems under duress. They would have included hidden pathways, ways to circumvent their own work if the opportunity arose. I can find them." The past 6 months had been a revelation for everyone involved. What had started as Marcus's personal mission to rescue slaves had evolved into something much larger. The human liberation fleet now consisted of over 100 ships and thousands of volunteers from dozens of species. Word of their success had spread throughout the galaxy's oppressed populations, and beings were seeking them out, offering their unique abilities to the cause. The Quillen turned out to be master infiltrators, capable of squeezing through impossibly small spaces. The Andraxians became tactical coordinators, their multi-threaded thinking perfect for managing complex operations. Other species brought their own gifts: telepathic Mentari for communication, shape-shifting metamorphs for reconnaissance, strength-enhanced Goliaths for assault operations, but it was humanity that held it all together. They had something the galaxy had never seen before: the absolute conviction that freedom was a right, not a privilege, combined with the military expertise to make that conviction a reality. "Fleet positions," Marcus ordered. The main display showed dozens of ships converging on Grimash Prime from multiple vectors. It was the largest operation the Liberation Fleet had ever attempted, and success would send a message across the galaxy that nowhere was beyond the reach of justice. "Vorthak's personal fleet is moving to intercept," Jackson reported. 12 heavy cruisers, 36 fighters. Marcus studied the tactical display with calm focus. "Standard formation. Remember, our priority is the slaves, not destroying Brutarian ships. We get in, we get them out, we get home." The battle began before they reached the planet. Vorthak ships attacked with typical Brutarian ferocity, seeking to overwhelm the Liberation Fleet through sheer brutality. But the humans had learned much about space combat in their months of operations, and their alien allies had taught them even more. Zara watched in fascination as Marcus coordinated the battle. His commands were crisp and precise, but what impressed her most was how he incorporated suggestions from his alien crew members. When Jackson identified a weak point in the enemy formation, Marcus immediately adjusted their approach. When the Quillen sensors operator detected a hidden minefield, the human captain trusted the information completely. This is how humans fight, she realized, speaking over the tactical channel to Sarah, not as individuals, but as a unified force that incorporates the best of everyone. "It's more than that," Sarah replied, dodging debris from a destroyed enemy fighter. "It's how we see the galaxy, not as separate species competing for resources, but as potential allies working toward common goals." The Liberation Fleet carved through Vorthak's defenses with surgical precision. Where the Brutarians relied on brute force, the humans used strategy and coordination. Where the enemy expected traditional tactics, they encountered innovations born from the combination of human military doctrine and alien capabilities. Orbital defenses neutralized, reported the Goliath weapons officer. His massive hands delicately operating controls designed for much smaller beings. Path to the facility is clear. Marcus stood from his chair. Assault teams, prepare for boarding. Zara, you're with me. The fortress was a monument to Brutarian arrogance, massive, intimidating, and designed to inspire fear in anyone who approached it. But as their boarding pods penetrated its hull, Zara felt only determination. Somewhere inside this structure were thousands of beings, just like she had been, hopeless, frightened, waiting for someone to remember their worth. The interior was a maze of corridors and chambers, all built to Brutarian scale. The human assault teams moved through the oversized passages like shadows, their weapons speaking in whispers that dropped guards before they could raise alarms. This way, Zara directed, her consciousness interfacing with the fortress's crystal systems. The primary holding areas are 3 levels down. As they descended deeper into the structure, they began encountering the enslaved workers. Most were Crystallians like Zara, but there were others Andraxians forced to calculate targeting solutions for Brutarian weapons. Quillen used for maintenance in spaces too small for their captors. Even humans who had been captured during earlier raids. "My God," whispered one of the human soldiers upon seeing the conditions. "How many are there?" "Too many," Marcus replied grimly, directing his teams to secure the area while Zara worked to unlock the holding cells. The crystal formations on her temples blazed with light as she connected to the fortress's main computer. The system was vast and complex, protected by layers of security that would have taken conventional hackers days to penetrate. But Zara wasn't a conventional hacker. She was speaking to the crystals in their own language. "Found them," she announced. "The Crystallian engineers did hide pathways. They've been waiting for someone to use them." Cell doors began opening throughout the facility as Zara's consciousness flowed through the system like water through a maze. Thousands of beings who had given up hope suddenly found themselves free, staring in amazement at the mixed teams of humans and aliens who had come to rescue them. "This is for Crystalla," Zara whispered to herself as she worked. "This is for everyone who thought they were forgotten." The evacuation was massive and complex, requiring every transport ship in the Liberation fleet, but Marcus had planned for this. They had enough capacity to take everyone. Plus the enslaved workers they had freed from other facilities. It was during this evacuation that Vorthek himself finally appeared. The Brutarian warlord was even more massive than Zara remembered, his armor now bearing additional scars from his previous encounter with Marcus. He carried a weapon that looked capable of melting through starship hulls, and his red eyes burned with rage. "Human!" he roared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You have destroyed everything I built. I will eat your bones and display your skull in my trophy hall." Marcus stepped forward calmly, his weapon ready, but not yet aimed. "Vorthek, funny thing about trophies, they're only impressive if people respect what you did to get them." The Brutarian charged with surprising speed for something his size. His massive weapon fired, sending bolts of plasma that melted the floor where Marcus had been standing. But the human was no longer there, moving with the fluid grace that had impressed Zara during her rescue. What followed was not really a fight, it was a demonstration. Marcus moved around Vorthok like a dancer, his shots precise and devastating. The Brutarian's armor cracked and sparked under the assault, but more importantly, his pride was being systematically dismantled. "You see," Marcus said conversationally as he dodged another wild swing, "the problem with ruling through fear is that fear only works until someone shows up who isn't afraid." Vorthek's weapon overloaded and exploded, taking his right arm with it. The mighty warlord fell to his knees, blue blood streaming from multiple wounds. "Finish it," he gasped. "Kill me and take your victory." Marcus lowered his weapon. "I'm not here to kill you. I'm here to show you that your way doesn't work anymore." He gestured to the empty cells around them. Every being you enslaved is now free. Every credit you spent on security was wasted. Every moment you spent building this place was pointless. The human turned away from the defeated warlord. The galaxy is changing, Vorthek. You can change with it, or you can be left behind. As they departed the fortress, Zara found herself on the bridge again, watching Grimosh Prime fall away behind them. The fortress was empty now, its purpose gone, its master broken. Soon it would be nothing more than a monument to the futility of oppression. Where to now? She asked Marcus. He consulted a data pad filled with reports from across the galaxy. Intelligence has identified 17 more facilities. The Orion Syndicate is apparently running a breeding program. Marcus led the group through a maze of service corridors that seemed to exist beneath the main market levels. Zara marveled at how he navigated the complex without hesitation, as if he had memorized every turn and passage. Behind them, the sounds of Valdorian search parties grew more distant, but Marcus never slowed his pace. "How do you know this place so well?" asked Jackson, one of the freed Andraxians, his blue feathers still ruffled with anxiety. "Did my homework," Marcus replied tersely, checking a small device on his wrist. "Rule number 1 of any rescue operation, know your exit strategies." They reached a maintenance shaft that led to the station's lower cargo bays. Marcus pried open the access panel with surprising strength, revealing a narrow tunnel that descended into darkness. "Everyone stays close," he instructed. "Single file, no talking once we're in there. Sound carries in these shafts." One by one, they dropped into the tunnel. Zara found herself directly behind Marcus, close enough to notice details about him that she hadn't observed during the chaos of the rescue. His clothing was made of some material she didn't recognize, dark and practical, with numerous pockets and attachments. The weapon he carried was unlike anything in her knowledge of galactic firearms, sleek and efficient, but somehow primitive-looking compared to energy weapons. As they moved through the darkness, Zara whispered, "What kind of weapon is that?" Marcus glanced back at her, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Slug thrower. Fires projectiles using chemical propulsion. That sounds ancient. Sometimes old is better. Energy weapons can be detected, jammed, or overloaded. This?" He patted his weapon affectionately. "This just works." They emerged into a vast cargo bay filled with containers from across the galaxy. Marcus led them between towering stacks of freight toward what appeared to be a small, unremarkable transport ship. As they approached, Zara realized her assessment was completely wrong. The ship looked ordinary from the outside, but the moment Marcus activated its systems, she could feel the power humming beneath its hull. This was no simple transport. This was a warship disguised as a freighter. "Welcome aboard the Defiance," Marcus said, gesturing for them to enter through the cargo ramp. "She may not look like much, but she's gotten me out of tighter spots than this." The interior was even more impressive than the hidden power systems. Every surface was designed for efficiency and function, with numerous weapon racks, medical stations, and what appeared to be sleeping quarters for a dozen people. "You rescue people often," Zara observed, noting the well-stocked medical bay and the multiple sleeping areas. "Often enough," Marcus confirmed, moving to the pilot station. "Strap yourselves in. We're leaving now, before the Valdorians figure out where we went?" As the freed slaves secured themselves, Marcus's hands danced across the control panel with practiced ease. The ship lifted off so smoothly that Zara barely felt the movement, despite knowing they were accelerating rapidly away from the station. "Where are you taking us?" asked a small, furry being from the Quillen system. "Sanctuary Station," Marcus replied, concentrating on his piloting. "It's a neutral facility in unclaimed space. From there, you can find passage home or start new lives wherever you choose." Zara felt a pang of sadness at the mention of going home. "What if we don't have homes to return to?" Marcus's expression softened slightly. "Then we help you find new ones." During the journey, which Marcus said would take 3 standard days, the freed slaves began to share their stories. The Andraxians had been captured during a pirate raid on their merchant vessel. The Quillen had been taken from his family during a planetary invasion. Each tale was different. But they all shared the same theme: beings torn from their lives and reduced to property. Zara found herself spending most of her time near the front of the ship, watching Marcus work. He seemed to never need rest, constantly monitoring communications, adjusting their course, and maintaining the ship's systems. When she asked about this, he simply shrugged. "Sleep is a luxury in my line of work. I'll rest when we reach Sanctuary Station." "What exactly is your line of work?" Zara pressed. "You're not just a pilot or a merchant." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his brown eyes focused on the starfield ahead. "I'm what my people call a liberator. We find beings in slavery and we free them." "Simple as that? How many of you are there?" "Enough." His tone suggested that was all the information he was willing to share on that topic. On the second day of their journey, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Marcus's calm demeanor instantly shifted to high alert as he scanned his instruments. "3 Valdorian interceptors coming in fast," he announced. "They must have tracked our ion trail." The freed slaves looked around nervously as the ship shuddered under sudden acceleration. Through the viewports they could see the sleek shapes of their pursuers gaining ground. "Can we outrun them?" Jackson asked, his feathers now completely flattened against his body in fear. "Not in a straight race," Marcus admitted, his hands flying over the controls. "But who said anything about racing?" What happened next defied everything Zara thought she knew about space combat. Instead of fleeing, Marcus turned the Defiance directly toward the pursuing ships. The former slaves watched in amazement as their humble transport suddenly bristled with hidden weapons. "This is Captain Thrace of the Valdorian Navy," came a transmission. "Return our property immediately or be destroyed." Marcus keyed his communicator with a grin that was somehow more terrifying than reassuring. "This is Captain Marcus Chun of the Human Liberation Fleet. Your property is now free beings under human protection. If you want them, come and take them." The lead interceptor fired first, sending a stream of plasma bolts toward the Defiance. Marcus rolled the ship impossibly fast for something its size, avoiding the attack completely. His return fire was precise and devastating. The interceptor's engines exploded in a brilliant flash, sending the ship tumbling helplessly. "Impossible," came Thrace's voice over the comm. "No freighter should have that kind of firepower." "I'm full of surprises," Marcus replied, targeting the second interceptor. The battle was brief and decisive. Marcus fought the 3 military vessels as if he were playing a game, always one step ahead of their movements, his weapons finding their marks with mechanical precision. Within minutes, 2 interceptors were disabled and the third was fleeing back toward Valdorian space. "How?" Zara breathed, staring at the retreating enemy ship. "How did you do that?" Marcus's expression was thoughtful as he powered down the weapons. "Humans have been fighting wars for longer than most species have had spaceflight. When we finally made it to the stars, we brought that experience with us." "But you're just one person. How can one being be so effective against trained military pilots?" "Because I'm not just one person," Marcus explained, bringing up a star chart on the main display. "I'm part of something bigger. Every human ship in this sector is connected through our tactical network. When I fight, I have access to the combined experience and knowledge of thousands of other liberators." Zara studied the star chart and noticed something that made her crystal formations glow with excitement. There were dozens of markers scattered across the map, each one representing a human ship. "There are so many of you." "More every day," Marcus confirmed. "Word is spreading about what the galaxy's various empires do to conquered populations. Humans don't tolerate slavery, Zara. Not from anyone, not for any reason." The revelation sparked intense discussion among the freed slaves. Some were incredulous. How could a single species, apparently new to galactic civilization, be challenging established powers like the Valdorian Empire? Others were hopeful, wondering if humanity might be the answer to the galaxy's systematic oppression. Zara found herself increasingly fascinated by Marcus himself. During quiet moments, she observed how he interacted with the ship's systems, how he seemed to anticipate problems before they arose, how he carried himself with quiet confidence despite being alone among alien beings. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said during their final night aboard the ship, Marcus glanced up from the maintenance panel he was working on. Sure. Before you became a liberator, what were you? His hand stilled on the panel. A soldier. Human military, special operations. We were exploring the outer rim when we discovered what was happening out here, the slavery. The oppression. The way weaker species were being treated by stronger ones. And you decided to do something about it. We decided the galaxy needed to change. His voice carried a weight that spoke of difficult decisions and personal sacrifice. Some of us went back to Earth to report what we'd found. Others stayed to help where we could. Do you miss it? Your home? Marcus resumed his work, but Zara could see the emotion in his movements. Every day. But there are beings like you who need help, and someone has to provide it. The next morning, they arrived at Sanctuary Station. Zara's first glimpse of it took her breath away, instead of the cold, industrial structure she had expected. The station was a beautiful arrangement of interconnected spheres and rings, with gardens visible through transparent sections. Ships of dozens of different designs were docked at various levels, and she could see beings from across the galaxy moving freely through the corridors. It's beautiful, she whispered. Wait until you see the inside, Marcus said, bringing the Defiance in for docking. Zara pressed her face against the cold metal bars of her cage, tears streaming down her pale blue cheeks. The crystalline structures growing from her temples caught the harsh lights of the slave market, casting rainbow patterns on the dirty floor. She had been here for 3 cycles now, watching other beings sold off to various masters across the galaxy. The Valdorian slavers had taken her from her homeworld of Crystalla during a raid that left her entire village in ruins. She was supposed to be married to Corvash, a kind merchant from the neighboring settlement, in what would have been a union of love rather than arrangement. Now she was nothing more than property, waiting to be sold to the highest bidder. Fresh meat from the outer rim? Shouted Grix, the lead slaver. His reptilian features twisted into what passed for a smile among his species. Look at those crystal formations. Purebred crystalline female, perfect for breeding or luxury companionship. Zara shuddered at his words. She had heard the stories of what happened to her people when they were sold into slavery. The males were usually worked to death in the mining operations, their natural ability to sense valuable minerals exploited until their bodies gave out. The females faced a different, fate-forced breeding programs designed to create hybrid workers, or worse. Kept as exotic trophies by wealthy collectors, the marketplace buzzed with activity as various alien species examined the merchandise. A group of tall, insectoid Montari clicked their mandibles excitedly as they inspected a cage full of young humanoids. Nearby, a wealthy Plutonian examined a strong-looking Gorvidian through a monocle, clearly evaluating the being's potential as manual labor. What about this one? A deep voice rumbled through a translation device. Zara looked up to see a massive creature approaching her cage. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, with thick, armored skin and 4 arms ending in claws that could easily crush her skull. This was a Brutarian, one of the most feared warrior races in the known galaxy. They were notorious for their cruelty and their appetite for violence. Ah, excellent choice, Lord Vorthok. Grix slithered over quickly. This little beauty would make a perfect addition to your collection. Crystallians are known for their docility and their unique, shall we say, aesthetic qualities. The Brutarian's red eyes fixed on Zara, and she felt her blood turn to ice. She had heard whispers about Vorthok during her time in the market. He was a warlord who collected rare females from across the galaxy, keeping them in his fortress on the dead world of Grimosh. None who went there ever returned. She's young, Vorthok noted, his voice like grinding stone. Good breeding potential. The crystals are well-formed, too. How much? For you, my lord, a mere 50,000 credits. Zara's heart sank. That was more money than most beings saw in their entire lifetime, but for a warlord like Vorthok, it was pocket change. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to the Crystal Mothers, the ancient guardians of her people. Deal, Vorthok said, producing a credit chip. Have her prepared for transport? I want her aboard my ship within the hour. As Grix excitedly processed the transaction, Zara felt the last of her hope drain away. She thought of Corvash, probably believing her dead by now. She thought of her family, their bodies likely still lying in the ruins of their home. Soon she would disappear into Vorthek's fortress, just another treasure in his collection of horrors. The slaver approached her cage with a neural shock collar, the device humming with malevolent energy. "Time to go, little crystal. Try not to cause any trouble, or you'll regret it." Just as Grix reached for the cage door, a commotion erupted near the market entrance. Shouts and sounds of struggle echoed across the bazaar as several Valdorian guards rushed toward the disturbance. "What's going on?" Vorthek demanded, his hand moving to the plasma weapon at his side. "Nothing to worry about, my lord," Grix assured him, though his nervous tail twitching suggested otherwise. "Probably just some troublemaker trying to steal merchandise. My guards will handle it." The sounds of conflict grew louder, accompanied by strange popping noises Zara had never heard before. Through the chaos, she caught glimpses of something moving between the cages with impossible speed, something smaller than most of the beings in the market, but moving with deadly purpose. "Look out!" One of the guards screamed, just before a bright flash lit up that section of the market. That was when Zara saw him. The creature was unlike anything she had ever encountered. It stood roughly 2 meters tall, with pale skin and strange, short fur covering the top of its head. It wore some kind of dark clothing and moved with a fluid grace that reminded her of the shadow dancers from her homeworld's ancient legends. In its hands, it carried a weapon that spat fire and thunder, dropping Valdorian guards with each thunderclap. "Human!" Vorthek roared, recognizing the species. "Impossible. They're just a myth." But Grix was already backing away from the approaching figure, his reptilian features pale with terror. No, not real. Humans aren't real. They're just stories to frighten children." The human continued his advance through the market, his weapon speaking death with mechanical precision. Zara watched in fascination as he moved. There was something almost artistic about the way he fought, as if violence was merely another form of expression for his kind. Guards fell around him like wheat before a scythe, their advanced weapons no match for his speed and accuracy. "Stop him!" Vorthek commanded, drawing his own plasma cannon. The weapon was designed to punch holes through starship hulls, but the human simply rolled to one side, the blast scorching the ground where he had been standing before the Brutarian could fire again. The human's weapon barked twice, and Vorthek stumbled backward, blue blood streaming from wounds in his chest and shoulder. The mighty warlord, feared across 3 star systems, looked down at his injuries in shock. "Impossible," he gasped. "I am Brutarian. We are the ultimate warriors." The human said something in a language Zara didn't recognize, but his tone was unmistakably mocking. He gestured with his weapon toward the market exit, clearly telling the wounded warlord to leave. Vorthek's pride warred with his survival instincts for a moment, but pain and the sight of his own blood quickly settled the matter. Clutching his wounds, he stumbled toward his ship, his remaining guards helping him retreat. Now only Grix remained between the human and the cages. The slaver's tail was twitching so rapidly it was almost a blur, and his usually confident voice had risen to a terrified squeak. Please. I'm just a businessman. I have a family. 17 eggs that haven't hatched yet." The human studied him for a moment, then spoke in heavily accented but understandable galactic standard. "Keys. Now, what keys?" "I don't know what you mean." The human pointed his weapon at the slaver's head, and Grix immediately understood. "Oh, those keys." "Yes, of course." He fumbled with a ring of electronic devices at his belt. "Here, take them. Take everything. I'll find a new line of work. Maybe farming. Farming's nice and safe." The human took the keys, then made another gesture toward the exit. Grix didn't need any translation. He practically teleported himself out of the market, leaving behind years of accumulated wealth and slaves. Suddenly, the marketplace was eerily quiet except for the soft sobs and whimpers of the caged beings. The human stood among the scattered bodies of the guards, his weapon now lowered but still ready. For the first time since her capture, Zara felt something she had thought lost forever. Hope. The human walked slowly through the market, examining each cage. When he reached Zara's, he stopped and looked directly at her. His eyes were a strange brown color, unlike anything she had seen before, but they held a warmth that immediately made her feel safer. "You okay?" he asked softly, his voice carrying none of the harshness she had heard when he spoke to Grix. Zara nodded, unable to find her voice. The human's presence seemed to fill the space around her cage with an energy she couldn't identify, not threatening like Vorthak's power, but something calmer and somehow more formidable. "What's your name?" he continued, working with the electronic lock on her cage. Zara," she managed to whisper. "Nice to meet you, Zara. I'm Marcus." The lock clicked open and he swung the cage door wide. "You're safe now." As Zara stepped out of the cage on unsteady legs, she noticed that Marcus was already moving to the next enclosure. He wasn't just freeing her, he was freeing everyone. One by one, the cages opened, and their occupants emerged, blinking into the light of freedom. Some of the freed slaves immediately ran for the exits, desperate to escape before more guards arrived. Others stood in shock, unable to believe what was happening. A few, like Zara, simply watched this strange human work his way through the market with methodical efficiency. "Is this real?" asked a young Andraxian male, his feathers still ruffled from fear. "Are we truly free?" "As free as I can make you," Marcus replied, opening another cage. "But we need to move fast. This place will be crawling with Valdorian military soon." Zara found her voice at last. "Why? Why are you helping us?" Marcus paused in his work and looked back at her. For a moment, she thought she saw something deep and sad in those strange brown eyes. "Because nobody deserves to be property," he said simply. "And because someone has to—" As if summoned by his words, the distant sound of approaching ships began to echo through the market. Marcus's head snapped up, his expression shifting to one of alert calculate.